From Upper Michigan's source, your TV6 First Look begins with breaking news coverage.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Kuchner-Kavich. A Nigerian man has been charged in the March 25th, 2022 suicide death of Jordan DeMay, a 17-year-old Marquette Senior High School student. 3 Nigerian men in total have been charged in a sextortion ring. TV6's Vinny Lavia joins us live in studio. He has the latest from today's press conference with the U.S. Attorney for Western Michigan. Vinny?
Thank you, Ben. Mark Totten unsealed a federal indictment today charging the 3 men. This all follows an investigation by the Marquette County Sheriff's Office and FBI. The indictment claims the 3 sexually extorted multiple minors and adults in Michigan and across the country. One of the men, 22-year-old Samuel Ogashi, is charged directly in DeMay's death. Ogashi faces 4 charges in total. These include sexual exploitation of a minor resulting in death. The indictment alleges it was Ogashi who sextorted DeMay, which ultimately caused him to take his own life.
When sextortion occurs online, the perpetrator often pretends to be someone else and then persuades the victim to send compromising photos or perhaps engage in compromising conversation. The perpetrator then threatens to disclose those photos or the conversation if the victim doesn't provide either money or further sexual favors.
The grand jury alleges the defendants bought hacked social media accounts to pose as young women. This is how they would lure young adult men and minors into sexual chats. And Totten goes on to say the investigation is still ongoing. He adds that further charges could be made to other defendants.
We begin your early news, continuing our coverage on the arrests of 3 Nigerian men in a sextortion ring connected to Upper Michigan. The Marquette County prosecutor and sheriff share early work on the investigation into Jordan DeMay's death that led to indictments a year later. TV6's Justin Van Toft tells us what long-term effect this case could have on those like it in the future.
The Marquette County prosecuting attorney and sheriff are reflecting on yesterday's announcement that a man has been charged in the sextortion and death of Jordan DeMay. Samuel Ogashi was one of 3 total charged for operating an international sextortion ring. Prosecuting attorney Matt Weesey says this is a landmark case.
I'm not aware of any federal case that has gone international like this. The common thing that we hear in society and our communities are that when there's an international scam like this, well, there's nothing that can be done. I think that this has cracked open that door to show that there can be accountability and that something can be done.
Marquette County Sheriff Greg Zybert says early work from state authorities and local law enforcement, like Detective Captain Lowell Larson, played an important role in the investigation.
That was an integral part of this, is knowing exactly, IP addresses and that type of thing. But it's being able to follow up on those breadcrumbs and put together a case.
Jordan's mother, Jennifer Buda, says she is thankful to everyone who was involved.
We know that this was no small task, and your commitment to Jordan's case will make us forever grateful. Each and every person who touched this case needs to be commended for their dedication and resiliency that got us where we are today. Our focus going forward is to bring more awareness to children, young adults, and parents.
Zybert says this case should serve as a lesson for anyone who is active on social media and the internet.
I think this is a perfect example to use for parents to use and say, if this happened to Jordan, this can happen to you. So, be wise about the information or the pictures that you send out.
Zybert says the most important thing you can do to keep your children safe online is to put the electronics away and have an honest conversation with them about the dangers of social media. Justin Van Hoff, TV6 News, Marquette.
The death of Marquette teen Jordan DeMay last year continues to spark important conversations here in the Upper Peninsula and across the country. His story has been shared thousands of times, the impacts being felt in homes, communities near and far, and by those who loved and knew Jordan. Jordan's story shook us as parents, as educators, as human beings.
That night, I last spoke to him on FaceTime. Said goodnight as normal. In the morning, it was a normal morning for me as I got up with my kids. I had seen a text from Jordan during the night, and I sent him a text just asking how he was and telling him I hoped he had a good day, and he didn't respond. And when he didn't respond, I knew that something wasn't right, and so I contacted Jordan's dad, and things just escalated from there as we found out what had happened in that 6-hour period the night before.
Jordan died by suicide on March 25th, 2022, after an exchange we've just learned more about in the last month. 3 Nigerian men are charged with creating a fake account on Instagram and using a sexually explicit photo sent by Jordan to blackmail him into sending them money. We now know that when Jordan didn't send enough money, these men threatened to share the photo with his family and friends, pushing Jordan to take his own life. It's called sextortion, and it's far more common than we may have ever realized. The men in Jordan's case are awaiting extradition to the United States to face charges. It will be a long legal process and one we will certainly follow. But in the meantime, Jordan's story continues to make an impact, and it's important we keep this conversation going. Last week, on what would have been Jordan's 19th birthday, I sat down with Jordan's mother, Jennifer Buda, as she talked very openly about her son grieving his death and her fight to help other kids. The stories and the memories of Jennifer Buda's son, Jordan DeMay, come without effort. Walking along the football field where he spent so much time, Jennifer smiles, talking about senior photos, track meets, and who he was as a person and as her son.
Jordan was a really social individual. He had many groups of friends. He was kind to everyone. He would be the kid who came into the room and flashed a smile or was dancing to the music, goofing off in the locker room. But he was also really close to his families and had a deep love for his sisters. We were very close, very close. Yeah.
Jennifer recalls traveling for sports together, listening to music, shopping, goofing off, just having conversations in the kitchen, at night before bed, doing the simple things together like aligning their schedules. It's those quiet moments, the ones you don't realize are so precious, she seems to miss the most.
I wish he were here today to celebrate his birthday and we could go to the beach like he would want to. I miss him every single day.
It's been over a year since Jordan died by suicide. She says life since that day has been overwhelming, emotional, nearly too much to comprehend.
A year ago, I said I would live life for Jordan, and we have to make something meaningful come of this horrible situation. And if we can save one life, then what happened to him means something.
She may never be able to quantify the lives Jordan's story saves, but the way the conversation has changed around sextortion, suicide, and social media, it's impossible to not feel the impact, and it solidifies the decision to be upfront and forward about what happened to Jordan. Why? Why did you decide to just come forward with it rather than stay quiet?
If it could happen to Jordan, it could happen to anyone. I wanted to prevent any other child from being victimized and put that out there. As parents, if we didn't know about sextortion, we were certain that other parents didn't know about it either, and it was time to sit down and have a conversation.
And those conversations are happening here in the Upper Peninsula and across the country. Jennifer has heard from parents as far away as Georgia. She's felt pride knowing that parents are sitting down and engaging with their kids in new ways because of Jordan.
For me, as a mother of a little boy, I hadn't had a conversation like that with my son, but you bet I did as soon as I read your story and read about Jordan. And so I can only imagine there have been a lot of those kinds of moments where people have reached out. I mean, are you getting that kind of a response?
Definitely. We get messages all the time from parents. It definitely sparked conversations that parents would not have had with their children. And also let children know that if this did happen, it's okay to go to your parents and ask them for help in this situation.
It doesn't take away her loss. It doesn't fill the void. But it does keep her moving forward to see her son's legacy form into a meaningful and powerful force. Sextortion. It's a crime we've learned so much about in the last year after Marquette teen Jordan DeMay, caught in a scam, died by suicide. Investigators are calling it a landmark case, as 3 Nigerian men are now awaiting extradition to the United States on charges related to the sextortion of Jordan DeMay. Catching these predators is rare. They're typically overseas, creating a challenging web of jurisdictions, red tape, and a complex cyber trail. But in Jordan's case, local law enforcement did it right, credited with quickly tracking down IP addresses and information vital in learning the location and names of the 3 men charged. On what would have been Jordan's 19th birthday, I sat down with Jennifer Buda, his mother, who is working to make sure what happened to Jordan last year doesn't happen to anyone else. Jordan DeMay is remembered by his family and friends as being kind, social, a friend to everyone, a devoted brother and son, the kind of person who was just always there for you. It's been over a year since Jordan died by suicide after falling victim to sextortion. His mom, Jennifer Buda, is still in a bit of shock as to what happened.
Had you had any idea that these conversations were happening, that he was involved in anything like this?
No.
It's a pain Jennifer wants to prevent other families from ever feeling. Jordan's story has changed the conversation around social media, but her work is just beginning.
Right now, social media companies have no liability for anything that happens on their platforms. There's no safety, security features in place for minors.
And after what happened to Jordan, Jennifer is adamant about changing that. She's been talking with federal lawmakers, garnering support for the Kids Online Safety Act.
This bill would provide safety features for minors. It would eliminate target advertising to minors. It will give parent notifications of what their children are doing online, and also hold social media accountable for the things that are happening on their platform.
Exactly how would it do this? It would require social media companies to enable the strongest safeguards as the default, protecting minors' information, limiting who can contact a minor's profile, restrict location gathering, and provide parents tools and reports to supervise activity. The bipartisan bill was first introduced in 2022 and has just recently received support from Michigan U.S. Senator Gary Peters, a promising step to getting the legislation passed.
Unfortunately, part of social media companies, the way they make their money is to get people very engaged and stay on social media as long as they possibly can, and then provide material that sometimes is destructive. And so that's why it's important for us to put some guardrails around social media.
Senator Peters says one of the priorities is to make sure these companies aren't just focused on making money, but on the safety of their users. He says he's heard from families across Michigan, including Jordan's mom. And it's time for action. And this bill, he says, is a good place to start.
This legislation will allow parents, for example, to have kind of a way to monitor what is happening on that social media platform, what their children are actually seeing, what they're engaged. Also, we'll put some warnings if new individuals get on a platform who are not a friend or may not be an acquaintance, but may be somebody who has some harmful intent.
The bill has also received support from hundreds of advocacy and technology groups. It has the support, it has our kids at the center, and like Senator Peters said, Jennifer agrees it's a start.
I think it's really great that we have these groups behind it. It's not everything that I would love to see happen with a reform in social media, but it's a really great step forward to start making those changes.
And for Jennifer, it's a way to make sure what happened to Jordan means something.
In the most tragic of situations, Jordan's life is saving lives.
A Senate committee unanimously passed the Kids Online Safety Act last year, but it stalled. This session, with some updates to the bill, lawmakers hope it gets to the president's desk, despite opposition from technology companies. In the meantime, we can all continue to talk to our kids about sextortion, protecting our privacy online, and being supportive if and when someone we know finds themselves in a difficult situation.
From Upper Michigan's source, your TV6 Early News begins with breaking news coverage.
Good evening to you. I'm Clint McLeod. 2 of the 3 men charged with the sextortion and death of Marquette teen Jordan DeMay are now in the United States. It's a major development in a story we've been closely following since March 2022. Now, TV6's Elizabeth Peterson is in Grand Rapids, where the men arrived this morning from Nigeria. Elizabeth explains what happens next.
Clint, the 2 men will appear in federal court tomorrow right here in Grand Rapids in this courthouse. It will be their first court appearance. We'll be in the courtroom tomorrow for the beginning of the legal process. It's a major step in the investigation into what happened to Jordan DeMay. Finding the suspects, bringing them to the United States. Well, for those involved, they say it was a day that they thought might never happen. But this morning, when the plane touched down, the work of hundreds of people, the strength of Jordan's family, the support of the community, it was all acknowledged and it was all needed to make this day happen.
It's incredible what they have done. I am extremely grateful for their efforts and all of the manpower that went into this, because it could have just been another case and forgotten about. The fact that they did this, they found the people, they were able to arrest them and bring them here is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and I think it's very fitting for Jordan's story that this happened.
Certainly a sigh of relief this morning as the plane touched down and 2 of the suspects landed in the United States. After, at a news conference at Gerald R. Ford International Airport, the acting special agent in charge of the FBI in Michigan, Devin Kowalski, called it an extraordinary effort by all involved.
And make no mistake, charges of this type brought against subjects outside the United States are rare. Securing extradition of these subjects is even more rare. This investigation required thousands of hours of investigative work, and the techniques used and refined during the process will serve as a framework for disrupting criminal groups who engage in sextortion schemes going forward nationwide.
It's been over a year since Jordan died by suicide after investigators say 3 men from Nigeria purchased hacked social media accounts, created fake users, and ultimately persuaded DeMay to send a sexually explicit photo, which they used to extort him for money. When he wasn't able to pay them enough, he died by suicide. Samuel and Samson Ogashi face multiple charges, including conspiracy to sexually exploit minors, conspiracy to distribute child pornography, conspiracy to commit stalking through the internet, and Samuel faces an additional charge of sexual exploitation and attempted sexual exploitation of a minor, resulting in death. The extradition of the 3rd man is still pending. Now, we know that there were over 100 victims identified in this investigation into these men, and we've also been told that there have been more arrests. 3 people have been arrested. Those charges are being handled by Nigerian officials. This does remain an open investigation. That means more victims, more suspects could be identified and discovered. Samuel Ogashi faces a maximum penalty of life in prison. Samson Ogashi faces up to 55 years in prison on his 3 counts. Again, the legal process starting right here tomorrow in Grand Rapids. We'll be here in the courtroom. We'll bring you the latest tomorrow on your TV6 Early News. For now, I'm Elizabeth Peterson reporting live in Grand Rapids. Clint, back to you.
Tomorrow, 2 of the Nigerian men charged after a Marquette teen's suicide will return to court.
It's a landmark case, one that's changed the narrative surrounding sexual extortion, and one we've been following from the beginning. TV6's Elizabeth Peterson sat down with U.S. District Attorney Mark Totten to explain what makes this case so extraordinary.
Samuel and Samson Ogoshi will face a federal judge Thursday afternoon in Grand Rapids. Their indictment on sexual extortion charges lays out a March 2022 conversation between Samuel and 17-year-old Jordan DeMay of Marquette, as well as the conversations between the brothers and a third defendant conspiring and planning how they would successfully sextort young boys in the U.S.
They even had scripts, words, language. You know, when you're from another country and you're talking to people in our country, you need to be credible, you need to be believable, and you want to make sure you're using good English. And it certainly seems like, as we've alleged there, that there was some planning that went on as part of this conspiracy to be as believable and credible as possible.
Tragically, the conspiracy worked, and DeMay died by suicide after his conversation with Samuel. Then, investigators locally, statewide, and federally began to piece together what happened. Sextortion, or sexual extortion, is the practice of extorting money or sexual favors from someone by threatening to reveal evidence of their sexual activity. It's unusual to identify a victim in a federal indictment in this way, but at the request of Jordan's family and in an effort to educate teens and families, Jordan's name and story has been shared across our country.
But I can appreciate why the family asked that, is it just brings it all the more home. It's part of a larger story, and I think that's exactly what you see happening. I mean, this case has, at this point, an international audience. Like, there are papers, across the world that are covering this case right now because it's become one of the most prominent cases on sextortion.
Sunday, the two brothers, Samuel and Samson, were extradited to the U.S. from Nigeria on charges relating to the sextortion of young boys. Samuel is also charged with sexual exploitation resulting in the death of Jordan DeMay. We were in federal court Monday for the Ogoshi's first U.S. court hearing. On Thursday, they'll be formally arraigned, undergo a detention hearing, and pretrial conference. This case will be followed closely as it moves forward. For the work done to get these men in the United States, the negotiations that took place with Nigeria, and for the cooperation between numerous agencies on all levels, including the work of Jordan's family. It's an effort and a mission with weight and emotion, U.S. District Attorney Mark Totten recognizes.
Honestly, from the first time I met them, they've been on a mission that Jordan would leave behind a legacy that would help other people and that might even save some kids from being victims like Jordan was. And, we want to be partners with that. The FBI wants to be partners with that.
I asked Attorney Totten a number of questions he was unable to answer as the investigation into this international sextortion ring is ongoing. I asked him to clarify just how big the criminal organization is, if there will be more arrests, and if they found the people responsible for hacking the social media accounts Samuel and Samson allegedly purchased and used to pose as young women. What happened to the money sent to Samuel and Samson by the victims, and why the third defendant's extradition is still pending. There's still a lot we don't know, but Totten is optimistic the answers will come to light in the future as this all unfolds.
We begin with breaking news coverage. Just 2 hours ago in federal court, two of the suspects charged in the investigation into the death of Marquette teen Jordan DeMay faced a judge in the United States for the first time. Now, they were extradited to the U.S. yesterday. Our cameras were not allowed in the courtroom today. However, TV6's Elizabeth Peterson was. She joins us now live from Grand Rapids outside the courthouse. Elizabeth, take us through this afternoon's events.
Cody, the two brothers, Samuel and Samson Ogoshi, are facing multiple charges for their connection to an international sextortion ring brought to light through the investigation into the death of 17-year-old Jordan DeMay. Now, sextortion, or sexual extortion, is the practice of extorting money or sexual favors from someone by threatening to reveal evidence of their sexual activity. It was an emotional day in court today. This was the first time Jordan's family saw the defendants in person. They were emotional throughout the hearing, brought to tears several times. The two men sat mostly quiet, answering yes or no questions from the judge. One of the brothers was visibly shaking throughout the entire hearing. Essentially today, the judge ensured that the two men understood the charges against them. They read the indictment and he assigned court-appointed attorneys. Jordan DeMay died by suicide in March of 2022 after police say he was extorted through a fake Instagram account. Investigators locally and on the state and federal levels and internationally have been working diligently since then to find those responsible. Now, these crimes, they're often left unsolved, but in Jordan's case, the work being done to find these men is changing how these cases will be handled in the future.
This was a multifaceted investigation that involved identifying hundreds of victims, following the digital footprints left behind by these sextortionists on the internet, tracking the payments made by victims through multiple financial entities, and working with our overseas office in Nigeria and our Nigerian counterparts.
Jordan's parents, like I said, were at today's hearing. It's part of their healing process and part of their mission to protect other kids. Nothing they do will ever bring Jordan back, but they've made it a part of their process to help those and haven't stopped working and fighting to ensure that Jordan's life saves other lives.
Jordan gives me the courage. I have to be his voice, and I think about him and what he would want me to do, and in the hardest times, he is why I get up and I put one foot in front of the other and I can speak and say the things that need to be said.
Samuel and Samson Agoshi will be in court later again this week. Their official arraignment, pretrial conference, and bond hearing are set for Thursday. Samuel is facing life in prison. Samson is facing up to 55 years. The extradition of a third man charged in the investigation is pending. Reporting live in Grand Rapids, Elizabeth Peterson, TV6 News.
Now, two Nigerian men charged after the death of Marquette's Jordan DeMay entered not guilty pleas in federal court this afternoon.
And investigators say the men are part of an international sextortion ring. Samuel and Samson Agoshi were arraigned on multiple counts in Grand Rapids. Samuel faces a separate charge of sexual exploitation of a minor causing death after the 17-year-old DeMay died by suicide in March 2022. The Agoshis were extradited to the U.S. Sunday. And TV6's Elizabeth Peterson continues to follow this story closely. She was in court today and is live now to explain what happened. Elizabeth.
Cody, Samuel and Samson Agoshi were in court today for their arraignment, pretrial conference, and bond hearing. They were represented by their attorneys appointed to them at a hearing on Monday by the court. Now, today was just another part of the legal process. It didn't take very long, but it was another emotional day. Here are the 5 big takeaways from the courtroom. Samuel and Samson both pleaded not guilty on all charges. The prosecution released their evidence list, which includes online chat records and images between the defendants and the victims, cell phone records, financial records, and the medical examiner's report of Jordan DeMay. It was also noted that the defendants have no criminal history. The prosecution is requesting a jury trial that is expected to last 8 to 10 days. Today's bond hearing was adjourned at the request of the defense. They asked for more time to contact the defendant's family. That hearing will now take place next Wednesday. Now remember, this alleged sextortion ring was only discovered after 17-year-old Jordan DeMay's suicide in the investigation that happened after. We spoke with Jordan's parents after today's hearing and after an incredibly emotional and difficult week.
It's definitely tough to see them here, and it seems really surreal that we're even sitting there going through that. It makes me feel upset that we're even sitting there.
You know, everything is going quite faster than they've been anticipating. Everything has been in step. Everything they've talked about is happening. It's happening fast. It's happening on time. So we're pretty confident that this thing is going to wrap up relatively soon.
This case has received international attention. It's the first of its kind, tracking down the defendants, extraditing them to the United States, and then getting enough evidence to get them into the courts. Everyone that we've spoken to this week reiterates how incredibly important it is to be at this point for the family, for justice, and for Jordan. Reporting live in Grand Rapids, Elizabeth Peterson, TV6 News.